Are you actually streaming live right now? Okay, cool. Which channel? Is it actually on your? Okay.
Attention, you are now tuned in to Pass the Controller.
Game on. Round table, show me your moves.
Now these moves get good and get in the groove.
Gears of war like Sonic hop in the tuck.
You don't want the smoke, you'll get bodied by big nuts.
Come for the character, stay for the content.
Fans from the elite to the civic binding.
Conventions are stream, the topics deceased.
So tune in, peace and hair grease. Let's go, baby! Peace and hair grease.
Pass that, pass that, pass that, pass the controller. Pass that, pass that, pass that, pass the controller. Pass that, pass that, pass that, pass the controller. Pass that, pass that, pass that, pass the controller.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Pass the Controller. That's right, man. Listen, it's just a bunch of best friends coming together talking about video games and what's happening in the video game industry. You know who it is, man. I'm McNux, man, one of the hosts of Pass Controller. And we got our crew today. But before we introduce you to our special guests, we like to go through our main crew, man. First of all, right below me, you see this guy right here with the awesome arcade cabinets in the back, man, that I was trying to put my quarter in. My quarter got jammed. Smoke, what's going on, man?
What's going on? Tonight is a special night. We got the OG PTC Nation here in the house. The founding fathers are here tonight to rock the show like we always do every time. For the last 6 seasons, we've given you nothing but the best. And tonight is no short than quality programming. So tonight, I'm here with all these great people, and I'm going to pass the controller over to my boy, Civic. Civic Minded, what's going on, brother?
Yeah, what's going on, man? Nice intro. Hey, welcome back to the show, everybody. We got a little event coming up here pretty soon. We're going to be talking about later in the show tonight. It's the annual video games convention that we like to talk up, and we're going to be there once again. Too many games this year. Oaks Convention Center. What is it? Oaks, Pennsylvania, but it's called Greater Philadelphia Expo Center is what it's called. Yep. And yeah, we're going to be there, and it's great. And speaking of which, it was about a year ago that at that show we met our guest who we have on tonight. So Mark, take it away, man. Give us that intro, bro.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to, first of all, this guy's amazing, man. We met this guy at PAX. This was 2 years ago. It was PAX 2 years ago, I believe, man. Yeah, it was PAX 2 years ago. And just his game is phenomenal. This is one of the creators of Below the Stone. Of course, man, I love your studio, your dev studio. It's called Stroll Art Studios, man, which is, I love it, dude, seriously. Below the Stone is action roguelike exploration, 2D top-down pixel retro game. There's so many tags I can put on it, but I want to call out the father of Below the Stone, Mr. Mike Stroll Art. Mike, how you been, man?
I've been doing great. I mean, it's been a while since we chatted. We were hopefully going to meet up at at PAX, but this too many games, we're planning on having everyone meet up and hopefully have a little party after everything. And so we'll have to see if we can plan something out. But everything's been going great. The whole team's been super optimistic. Everybody's been doing great on the game. Hopefully going to have a demo very soon. So I know you said you wanted to play some footage of the game at some point, but it would be great, super honored to have this opportunity to talk with everyone and be able to, just be a part of this.
You know what? So first of all, it's great to have you, man. I mean, we've been trying to get you for like almost the last couple of years, to be honest with you. But it's great to have you here, and it's great to first of all to really shout out a lot of indie devs, man. You know what I'm saying? Because again, it's like it's the small games that we have, and I can't say small games really, man, because there's some indie devs that making some spectacular games, really. You know what I mean? It's just this exposure, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And that's why it's like, you know what, when I saw Below the Stone, I was like, okay, this guy needs the exposure badly, man, because this game is phenomenal, man. Everybody needs to check it out.
You saw this guy's game and you said to yourself, you know what, this guy needs to expose himself.
Expose himself,
and
man.
We're the ones to help him do it. Gosh,
that's what you do, man. You listen to
I'm not exposing myself enough yet, so
the night is still young.
Yeah, I thought this stream would be the way to do it, So
yeah.
I mean, I don't know about that exposing someone. Listen, man, when we want to show love, especially to your work, man, to your to your product, man, to your baby, pretty much, and that's what we do. First of all, for everybody that's new, and just seeing you for the first time. I mean, first of all, tell us about yourself real quick.
Well, I'm Mike Strollart, and that's my little pen name, I guess. But the getting started in the indie industry, like it's kind of been I think everyone's story is a little different because everyone's kind of weird in this industry. No one, maybe that's a downplaying a little bit. Everyone's let's just say everyone's a lot weird in this industry. So it's like you find a lot of people kind of on the ends of the like it kind of takes a certain personality to be able to sit in a single room for 4 years and work on a single thing for this long, and that's something you used to hear like monks used to do, and certain artists that would like lock themselves in a room for 3 months and make art. It takes a certain kind of dedication on one thing, on one baby, to work on it for this long. So, by the end, it's a part of you. The art behind me, this game, it's like a part of me, like a chunk, like a 5%, 10% chunk of me is that thing behind me. That goes for any indie developer. A piece of them kind of makes it out there, and it's almost like there's a lot of like pain that goes into it. There's a lot of like joy that goes into it when you put this game out there, and then people are like, oh my God, that's great.
Right.
That's an amazing feeling. And then you put it out there, and then somebody's like, this is the worst piece of shit I've ever seen, and it's like, that is, it's like being stabbed in the heart, So luckily for us, we haven't heard the second one very much, but usually it's always compliments. It's everyone like, oh my God, I can't wait for this game. That's the thing that keeps us going. It's all the people that are fans of us, all the people that we get to talk to, like yourself, you guys, that's the stuff that gives us energy to sit in our cave like a monk and just work on this.
You said 4 years you've been working on this title.
Yep. No, not just me.
Years.
Yeah.
No,
not just me. Yeah,
right.
exactly.
So you had a team and all that too.
Yeah.
But in those 4 years, like what, before we get into like this, like as far as the specifics of the game, like what were some of the like the highs and lows during that 4 years that, while you were producing Below the Stone?
Well, I mean, maybe I should go into like the lead up just a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, when we started this whole thing, I didn't go in for like a college degree or anything. I didn't go that route. I thought to myself, I want to make a game, and it's funny. This game started as just a picture. It was just a fake game screen, like screenshot I took. Just some art I did on the side, of like a little. Maybe I could share this picture at some point, but it was just like a pixel art dwarf, in a cave. I had two dwarves like facing each other with pickaxes in their hands. Um, some oars in the wall and some bats flying in from the side. And before like a line of code was done for the game, before I talked with Andrew about like if he'd want to work on this, he's our lead programmer. Before any of that started, I had that screenshot and I basically said like, okay, this game needs a pitch. And I was thinking to myself, this is going to be Below the Stone. So we title first, a game that like I like I thought to myself like, okay, I like the assonance of Below the Stone.
Right.
Below the Stone. I was like, okay, that's kind of catchy,
Okay.
And then, the rest started coming out. It was, this is a game about dwarves. I love dwarves. That's my, in World of Warcraft, that was the race I picked, in all these games, I love I love the bearded bastards. So, I was, that was my thing. And I also love roguelike games. I love games like Terraria and Minecraft. I love the kind of the freedom you got
Right.
from those games. So, this is like a weird stew that's being made, this game, right? Of all these different pieces kind of coming together, all these different like ingredients coming together. And then eventually it made, what we have today. So a pixel art roguelike about dwarves on the quest to the deepest depths, where in every descent you risk your life and go on new adventures, and where only the most determined dwarves with many lost lives will be rewarded with a hidden world lying below the stone. So
I love that. I love
get
that, man. I love that. Seriously. I'm gonna ask you this too, man. Was this your initial idea as far as like when you in the beginning of like game development too? It's like you gotta have an idea for sure,
yeah.
Was this your like oh, I've had this resting in my brain, or it was like certain concepts that was like running through your mind at first, before you settled on what's now Below the Stone?
Yeah, I mean, we had it was funny. It was like when we were first talking about working on a game, I had like a couple little ideas here and there. And they were all like kind of quirky in their own way. Like I tried to make them a little quirky and stand out. I usually think of like a name first,
Right.
and then the name kind of builds this. Like the name is usually like what is kind of built on. It kind of tells the story of what's going on. And then there's a little bit of artwork behind it and the little concept of, I almost, I talked a little bit about this before the show. It's like, I almost don't believe in game design documents, really. I feel like it's very restrictive.
Okay.
It's video games. I think for like AAA games, it makes sense to have like a really solid game design document. You need rules, you need like a foundation of where you're going to go.
Right.
But I think with indie games, it's very much like jazz, right? It's like you're kind of playing things as they go along, and you can't, like, somebody can come up with a really good idea as you're working on, I was saying like maybe when we're talking today, like a really cool idea will come out, or like somebody will say something like, oh, maybe you should have like little pets in the game. It's like, okay, that's a really good idea. Oh, but the game design document told us we can't do that. Like
you tend to find them to be a little bit more restrictive as as opposed to fostering the creativity. It puts limits on things. I sometimes think like game design documents and things like that's more for like you said, like AAA games where you have like stakeholders and shareholders that want progress and they want to review your notes. So cool.
Exactly. And I think with like indie games, like being able to play that jazz at any time, you'll just be in a game meeting. We'll meet every week, right, to chat with the whole team. And it might just be something like Matt, our artist, will like bring up an idea, and it'll be like, okay, yeah, damn, that really works. Let's try that out. Let's try doing some art for that and see where that goes. It's really nice to be able to play that kind of thing and just be able to do what you want at any given time. Like I said, I think game design documents work, as you said, Civic, for AAA games, that's you kind of need it when you have like there's a lot of money on the line like that, like stakeholders and stuff. But like for indie games, that's why you get things that are different and kind of on the edge of like when you go into the indie game alley, right, at PAX,
Yep.
you see games that AAA studios wouldn't dare to try. They're gonna be like, okay, whoa, that's way too risky. Like we need the 14th first person shooter, that
Yeah.
that does the exact same thing as the last one, So, and there's nothing wrong with games like that. It's just you're not like breaking the foundation. You're not breaking the mold, Whereas I think indie games, you kind of break the mold in a lot of ways because you get to try new things. And that's why, you go down that alley and you see people that are like, whoa, I haven't seen anything like this before, And you try it out and you're like, whoa, this kind of works. And, an hour or two passes by and then you're like, okay, damn, I didn't expect that to happen,
It's it's so funny too, Mike, because like you just said, being down at like indie game alley, you spend so much time, you know, trying out so many concepts, man, so many ideas, man, and then like I said, just picking your head, even when we was at PAX that 1 year, just picking your mind about, so how's this game work, man, like and just seeing your you go off and your idea just now on my at the tip of the my hands with controller and just like playing it and just playing your idea. I feel like I get more enjoyment out of that, man, than mostly if I go to like a AA, AAA game that's shown there. Like I'll just go to, let's say, the same time I believe that I met you and played your game was the same time that I believe TMNT Shredder's Revenge was out, and I got a chance to play TMNT. But that was for a little bit. I get a chance to even talk to, there was no devs on, standby or nothing like that to actually, pick the bird. But, just to play your game and then come back and play your game again, get a chance to play. It's like, it's a freedom, it's a freedom. And that's what I respect about indie developers like yourself, which is really amazing too. So,
I wanted to ask, you mentioned about your team. How big is your team right now?
So we got Andrew, our lead programmer.
Mm-hmm.
We got Karam, our lead musician. We have Dean, our UI designer. We got Eric, our programmer as well, and we got Matt, our artist. So we have 6-person team right now. So and before we had for the longest time it was just 3 of us. It was artist, myself, programmer, musician, and that was it. So we like doubled our team size just this year, and it's kind of crazy how like I look at other indie teams and I look at big AAA teams, and you see games that we're trying to create, like Below the Stone is kind of inspired by all these different games, and I look at their dev teams. It's like, well, this dev team has like 15 people, and it's like kind of crazy. I was kind of looking at it like, wow, we kind of we're trying to take a big bite out of this kind of genre, with a little team, So yeah, I mean, with 6 people, like it's awesome because everyone's ideas get in the game. Meeting up, having like a quick call. It's not like if you had 15 people, that would be impossible. It's like, okay, yeah, we need like upper management and lower management, and we need to like designate everybody during the week, what they're doing and everything. It's kind of nice being in this range because you get to play jazz a little bit. You get to talk out ideas and stuff. So to me, it's like the perfect team size, like the nice little like 3 to maybe 7 people or so is like that perfect range of people.
Gotcha. That's understandable.
If you added 3 more team members, your studio would be the same size as the group that made GoldenEye 64 back in the day.
That's all. That's kind of crazy to think about.
I know it is wild, but nowadays it's funny. You beat a game, and it's like a credit roll. That's like a Marvel movie. You have like 500 people. Like play through like God of War Ragnarok. And sequence is like, it's a good 10 minutes long.
Yeah.
I mean, there's literally thousands of people that come together to make those games. It's crazy.
It's kind of crazy. I feel like games also in the future, like I think the credits are gonna shrink even more because you have the whole I'm sure you guys have seen it like in the indie industry, especially there's like the whole AI discussion as well, where it's like people are gonna be like, okay, well, instead of getting a voice actor, I can just get this AI voice to do it, or I can do I can have this AI kind of do some concept art for me and stuff like that. There's already that talk.
Do you think that there's value in that, or you sort of
Oh,
like dissuaded
absolutely.
from exploring that? Really? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, it's tough, right? Because it's kind of like you have to think about it. Like, that's like directly looking at our jobs, like as an indie developer, it's like looking directly at you with a gun. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to take your job very soon,
Right.
I know
but
the feeling.
but yeah, and it's kind of like at the same time, I think, like, if you look at the past like 100 or 200 years, like, jobs in general have kind of always been transforming a little bit as like these revolutions have happened, right? And you almost got to look at it as like surfing a little bit, where you're gonna have to surf the next wave. You're gonna have to look at this and be like, okay, I got to learn this a little bit. I gotta step outside my comfort zone and like learn how to make this work for me. And it's tough. It's tough, but it's like also kind of inevitable. Like, we all kind of see it on the horizon. So it's like, you can either make it your enemy or you can make it your friend. You know what I mean? Like, which would you prefer to make it? You get to make the choice of what you want it to be in a way.
Well, I think we need to look at things like that, especially with all technologies. I mean, we always have this misconception that somehow, this is something that's going to replace humans. Like when
Yeah.
computers became readily accessible, the idea was all of a sudden, oh my gosh, we're going to have to, humans will work like 2-day work weeks and computers can do everything else for us. Well, that's not the reality. When
Yeah.
automation started to replace hand labor, everybody said, oh, it's going to take so many jobs. Yeah, but it created a lot of other jobs too.
Yeah.
So I know that it's like a give and take. It's, but I think looking at AI especially, I mean, I'm a writer by trade, and I recently had, my boss show us how great, this stuff is AI. It can do your job for you. And I'm sitting there like, oh, great. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I could get Chat GBT to do your work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, I guess you just have to kind of look at it as a tool, like anything else. I mean, a car is a tool.
Yeah.
A robot is a tool. AI is a tool. We just have to
Yeah.
kind of create some barriers, some parameters around that. But yeah, I mean, do you think that, in your opinion, I mean, how far are we from, having like fully fleshed out games where there's almost like no human aspect? I mean, are we going to get like when are we going to see the first AI generated game?
So let me just start the question with, I have absolutely no idea, but
Oh yeah, I'm just saying speculation. Are we 10 years out at this point, or is it like 10 weeks?
I think that might be right. 10 years. Now, I think, like, I'll answer it this way. This is like a weird, like, indirect way to answer it, but I feel like in like 20 to 30 years, almost like how we're making content from our house right now, right? From the comfort of our home. I feel like people in 20 to 30 years are going to be making like Hollywood movies from the comfort of their house, like,
Oh yeah.
let me let's get us four right now, and we're going to be I'm going to go on my computer and I'm going to prompt it to have us be the four hobbits in Lord of the Rings.
Right.
And we're going to be, we're just going to watch the movie of like just us being the four hobbits in Lord of the Rings, and it's good. I feel like that's going to be the next step of entertainment. We can kind of see it already. People, like, obviously we're making, YouTube videos, Twitch videos from home. And I feel like as time goes on, just a little bit longer, that's going to be kind of the next stage. And people are going to need writers. People are going to need this talent to be able to do this right. And that's going to be like the sign of quality, when you have like a professional writer using this as a tool, or like a professional who knows, like, directing movies using these tools. And I feel like that's going to be the next step. Like, I think these jobs are always useful, like, I think of like, it's like back when we were all like living in little tribes and living in caves. Like, you always had a writer, the storyteller in the tribe. You always had the person who is kind of like artistic a little bit. You always had a person who was like the proficient hunter, the proficient whatever.
Do you remember the show Amazing Stories by any chance? There's the Spielberg show. It was back in the early 80s, and you maybe just inadvertently, I don't know if you've ever seen it before, but that's
I've not.
every episode started that way, where it basically showed, you know, a caveman talking around a fire to all his friends, and you
Yeah.
couldn't hear what he was saying, but the intro, the credit sequence would go through and would show people like writing a book and drawing a picture, and then in the end, it was like it would pull back from a TV and would show you the first sequence of, you know, people watching the caveman talking to his friends, giving the stories. So do
Yeah.
yourself a favor, go on
I
YouTube.
will.
You it's so meta that you even just described that and had never seen that, but that is something really, it stuck with me, and I think you're 100% right. I mean, you know, storytelling and especially like historical accountability for things, you know, the way that we, I guess, you know, encapsulate and you know, perpetuate our cultural ideas, our norms, our dreams,
Yeah.
things like this. It's so important. And one thing I love about indie devs is that I think sometimes more than any other genre, and I don't just mean video game genre, but I mean music, movies, books, I think that there's like sort of like this responsibility where they're more artistically in tune with things. I look at a lot of indie games and I'm like, it really is art to me. It just is such a beautiful thing. You play a really good indie game and you're playing something that like was so, you could tell us this from the heart. You know, you get a different feeling when you play Tetris
Facts.
or when you play
Yeah.
Fez than you do. And I'm not saying it's better or worse, but look, I'm a big Street Fighter fan. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love those games. Don't get me wrong, but I don't feel the same sort of like emotions sometimes from those than I do others,
Yeah.
you know? So it's just definitely like a different role.
Yeah. I like to kind of compound on what you're saying. I think like with movies, right? Like all these there's different not genres, but there's different modes of telling a story, right? Reading a story versus watching a story in a movie, or like I find video games are kind of the next step in a lot of ways, because in no other way, no other mode of telling a story, do you actually get to live the main character doing the story. Like there's of course like first person storytelling and third person storytelling. You can kind of tell a story through the lens of somebody else in a book, and but the thing is, when you're in a video game, you're the one making the decisions. You're the one in charge of the story. And as an indie developer, as a game developer in general, you're unlike a movie. And in a movie, you can kind of you're almost sending out this is the way I look at stories. You're almost sending out a signal to other people. And you're almost kind of retelling like a feeling that you felt at any given time. At like you're almost you're trying to make people feel the same way you felt at a certain time or a certain place or a certain whatever. And you're trying to connect with people emotionally. And I think with indie games, it's the only, or not just indie games, but games in general, it's the only way you can make people feel like almost precisely what you felt at that time.
Exactly.
Whereas if almost every video game ever made, it has one thing in common. Almost every single game, they're all first person.
Yeah.
I don't mean
exactly.
like, I don't mean like perspective literally, but I mean first person in the sense that you're in control of the dynamic to a degree where your emotional investment and your ability to immerse and control the outcome creates a different emotional paradigm than it is like you're, to your point, just watching a movie. So movies are very third person. It's somebody, like you said, somebody else telling you and conveying those aspects, whereas opposed to like a video game, you're the one that's
feeling. You're literally feeling those aspects. And I think I was gonna say like sometimes you see it in like D&D, right? Like Dungeons and Dragons. You know, you get to be the person on the table in charge of what's happening in a way, right? You get to decide like, I want to punch the innkeeper in the face, you know, like this, I don't like this guy, you know, so you get to kind of do that. But in video games, you kind of do the same thing. You're in a way, as a writer of a video game, you're not steering this person. You're kind of giving them like a loose like range of things they can do. Like you obviously can't do infinite things. In a video game, it's usually confined within the rules of the game.
Right.
But you get to like set them free in this place, and you get to let them do whatever they want. And that, you know, I used to love writing, and I think like that's a lot of the way I look at indie games too. Like it's very fascinating, and it's very like you have impact emotionally unlike any mode of storytelling, you know.
Mm-hmm. It's
So
interesting too because I remember this is along the lines. There was one game that I remember playing at PAX that oh, man, I remember talking. I was had an in-depth conversation with this dev, and this was about I think it was Goodbye some high school. I forgot what it was. And this is a whole like slice of life game pretty much, but all the characters are like dinosaurs or aliens or animals or whatever.
yeah,
Too. But he had told me he was like, this is pretty much my depiction, for what I went through. I was like, and I
yeah,
was like, this game is amazing, dude. You know what I mean? Just the friends that you met, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, it's pretty much the same as my friends. It's like I just want to put that into the game, and here you go. This is the final product, man. So you're right. It's not like you have a freedom, a sense of freedom, compared to, I guess, in a sense, compared to like a lot of these AAA or like studios that it's like what, just stick by the actual
yeah.
theatrics of whatever, like God of War or Metal
They kind of
Gear.
had to play it a little safe,
Right,
you
right.
know.
You can go ahead and tell your story and just put it out there, and like I said, it's more enriching for us, man. It's more deep to us. It hits us. It hits home,
Yeah,
and it makes the game even more enjoyable to play. Which
yeah,
is phenomenal. I forgot. I should have got the title of the game. It was like Goodbye High School, something like that. I forgot something
yeah.
like that. But it was amazing. So,
Like, what's your favorite independent game you've ever played?
Oh man, okay. You're throwing the rough ones at me already. So
Or
I
like a top three, maybe. Yeah. Yeah.
that's I it's funny that we say this, but there's a lot of indie games that really made it big. It, we don't think of nowadays. We don't think of like Minecraft as an indie game. Like
right.
nobody thinks of Minecraft as an
Yeah.
indie game,
Yeah.
But it really
It
is in
was,
a way,
yeah.
right? Or it was, yeah. Now it's a little bit bigger, but like it really did start as an indie game, and um, it's projects like that I find very fascinating. Um, it really is hard to pick a favorite. I think when it comes to indie games specifically, um, you know, I find I find myself always going back to like a game like um Terraria in a
Mm-hmm.
way, right?
Right.
That's a very like open game. And it's still very indie, like they didn't like end up like selling to like a big like they didn't end up like going under Microsoft or anything, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
they're still their original team. So when I look at indie games, like I look up to that kind of thinking. I look up to like it's just like this team is so passionate about this game that they almost like I remember hearing a story about the lead developer, one of the developers on Terraria, and what he said was, um, we had conversations about starting on another game, but we're all so passionate about Terraria that
Yeah.
we just want to keep working on Terraria. Like I think it's like every time they bring up that conversation, they always just say, I want to keep working on Terraria. And I think they had like two final updates for the game because they
Right.
were like, okay, this is the final update, guys. We're not doing this anymore. And then, it's like this big deal. And then they're like, all right, guys, we're doing the next update, and it's kind of like it kind of shows like how much they love this game.
Mm-hmm.
So I look at those kind of stories, and that's kind of what I look at when I think of like a favorite indie game. It's kind of like the inspirational um mood that you get from the people behind it, and then
Mm-hmm.
when you play it, it's obviously a great game on the surface already, and then you get to hear the story behind it, and then it just makes you even more like attached to it in a way. um I remember Don't Starve was another
Mm-hmm.
fun game of mine, like another favorite. I used to play that one a lot. um so yeah, I mean, I don't think that exactly answers the question of like the top
That's
three
good.
favorite
That's
ones, but
good.
That's
yeah.
good. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, what if somebody in the audience was to come up to you and say, "Hey, look, you know what? what do you mean by indie developer? What does it mean to be an independent developer? How do you define it? Because I know that there's always sort of like that Venn diagram
Yeah, yeah,
to, you know, what really makes it, what we sometimes a small studio is an independent developer, but
yeah,
not always, you know. So
yeah.
what do you maintain is the definition of indie developer?
That's again another hard question. Like I think like it's it's hard to define like this is exactly, there's no like set in stone like this is the indie developer, right?
Mm-hmm.
um because you could always say like if somebody has a publisher they're not independent anymore, but also how in control is that publisher? Are they creatively in control, or um do they let the studio do whatever it needs to do to make this game, so
Right.
that's kind of like a graying of the question, right? Like, and it makes it hard to answer when you think about these kind of things like deeper. Like I think typically I think the a good definition of what an indie game is it's a studio who has full creative control of what they're working on, that they are allowed to have backing from like a like a publisher or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
um I think the independent comes in when it comes to like their creative, like what they're capable of doing on their project. So I think the moment like a publisher on a game says, okay, you need to do this, or Microsoft, let's say they buy your product, or they have like a stake in your product, and they go like, okay, you need to start doing this now. I think that you lose the independent name now, because now it's a larger studio that's telling you you need to do this. And I think an indie development studio doesn't have that rule. They don't have like a larger figure in the picture that's telling
Right.
them you need to do this.
So I have a
Makes
two-part
sense.
question. I got a two-part
Yeah.
question to ask you. First part of the question, because it's a detailed question.
Mm-hmm.
How does it feel that now that you put pen to paper, you sat down, this is your baby, you created this baby, it's growing. Now from there you have your team. You started up with 3. Now you got 6. I loved how you're telling the story about how you developed this. So, how does it feel now? You're already at PAX. You're making headway. Now you're about to debut on all the platforms from PlayStation 5. You're going to be on Microsoft. You're going to be on Steam. You're going to be on Xbox. How does that feel to know that you worked so hard and you have accomplished so much? How does that feel?
It's finally becoming real, like it's that's a very strange feeling, because it's you like I was making that like metaphor, that comparison earlier of like, you're kind of like a monk locked in a cave, or like
Mm-hmm.
putting himself in a cave for like 10 years, or you're an artist who locks himself away for 3 months just working on his paintings. In a lot of ways you're just that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of unexpected because you're kind of locked within these walls for so long. Like these 4 walls I got very familiar with, let me just say that. So the only recent change is the background, that's my banner at Too Many Games. So
Right.
that,
That's cool.
yeah, so these little things, like the 4 walls I got very used to. And it's kind of a strange feeling to break that mold, to suddenly you're going from, okay, we're just a little studio that's working on this thing. It's cool. We love it. And, this is something we love. This is something we want to work on. This is something we always dreamed about working on. And then suddenly you have the transformation of, this isn't just something that we love. This is something that other people love too. This is something that we put this out there. We put a trailer out there. And then you see all these comments like, oh my God, I can't wait till this comes out. Oh my, it. And then the next stage is now you're going on other platforms, and there's all these strangers who are going to be able to play what you're making, or be able to interact with what you're making, and experience the things that you created, and experience all these things all at once.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, it's overwhelming in a lot of ways, so.
Well, I'm going to expand on that. Now
Yeah.
that you said that, I'm going to. So from a 2-part question, it's going to be a 3-part question.
Okay.
This is the second part. The second part of the question is, now that you're now getting out there, people are noticing you. You paid your dues. You've been doing this hard work, and it's paying off. How does that feel when you have people that followed your journey, that are coming up to you, whether you're at the shows, whether you're online, and people are like, oh my God, I'm a big fan. How does that feel? How does that make you feel when people are inspired from, following you and now playing the game and everything?
I'll be honest, I get quite emotional about this. I remember it was at like one of the PAXs. I remember just like opening the curtains at night, and I was just kind of like staring out the light. I was alone in the hotel room, and I was just looking out at the lights. And I remember just thinking to myself, like, how did I get here? Like I was kind of like thinking to myself, and I had that experience too after our Kickstarter. I just remember we were having a party. We had like a Discord call. I don't know if anyone knew this. Right after the Kickstarter succeeded, or not after the Kickstarter, it was like 3 hours before the Kickstarter succeeded, I think. We were all in a call, and everyone was like all happy, like, oh my God, we got 3 hours left. Everyone was excited.
Right.
And I remember I remember people coming in and just being like, oh my God, I love this thing. Thank you so much. I donated $100 to this project. I just absolutely love it. This is the game I always dreamed about. And I think I just remember like crying. Like I was actually crying, and I was just overwhelmed,
Right.
like I was
That means
completely
you're doing it
overwhelmed.
right, man.
Yeah.
That means you're doing it right.
Yeah. Now,
And
my third question, final question. Well, I'll be another question later on, but my third question is, for people that are intimidated by road games, for people that like this in general may just want to start breaking into video games, and they want to start off where they want to work from their way up. As a developer, as a game designer, and as a gamer, how would you pitch it, and how would you draw the person into your game?
Okay, so this is going to be a very abrupt shift from my previous comment. Obviously, the previous question, I was very like it's like a reflective moment, and what I wanted to do with Below the Stone, and what I still strive in a lot of ways to do. Like, we want to make Below the Stone something that's like very accessible to somebody who's new to this kind of thing, right? New to roguelikes. We have like forgiving elements of the game where we want to make sure that like if your character dies, and just to give like a quick rule of what Below the Stone is like, we have like a system where there's this hub area you return to every time you finish these descents in these caves, right? And you're able to stock your items and store them. So anytime you make it out, you're able to store your stuff. So that's kind of like the forgiving element of the game. And anytime you make a descent, any equipment that you happen to bring with you, you're openly risking during that run. So if you put on a full set of iron armor and you spent like the last hour building that armor, you're putting that 1 hour on the line to go deeper into these caves, right? So it's always up to you what you want to bring down, right? But there's this kind of unforgiving element too of losing all that stuff, right? You signed the contract when you went down those caves with all that armor, right? You actually did that. You're on your own, which makes it even more painful, right? Because that was your decision. And we all remember playing NES games and SNES games, and we remember that time where we threw the controller at the television screen, and but the thing was, and I told this to Scott Miller when we were like before we signed Below the Stone up with them as a publisher, is I remember saying to him, I want to see somebody smash their keyboard over this game. and it sounds, and like I said, like that sounds very mean, right? In a lot of ways, it's like, who wants to see somebody like smash their keyboard? But it's like, to me, it was, I wanted to see somebody so immersed in this experience. And that's what happens when you throw a controller through the wall. You're so immersed in what's going on your screen that you as a person just threw like a $60 controller through the wall. And now you're going to have to fix your wall. You're going to have to probably fix the controller now. and you just did that because you were so angry at what just happened on a screen in a video game. It's like kind of a testament to what we were talking about earlier, where it's like as a writer, as a person making a video game, you're the one kind of guiding an experience in a lot of ways, and you're putting a person like literally in first person. You are the one playing. So when that bad guy kills you and you lost your iron armor, when you lost all this stuff, and you really felt like throwing that controller through the wall and doing all that stuff, it's like that's how in the moment you were. So I don't know if that answers the question or not, but yeah.
No. And it's good because I like it. I love it when people are transparent. When I ask questions, I go deep in questions.
Yeah.
So I like it when the transparency is important for anybody that is talking about what their love is and what they're doing and what they're putting out. It's important because I want to be immersed in the choices. It's about choices. It's about making decisions, and to me, it expands on that. So, I've played. Like the guys will tell you, I've always been skeptical about rogue games. There have been rogue games that will pull me in because of the writing and how you draw me in. So that you basically and to me, right there, you sold me on the idea that it's about choices. Do you put on a lot of armor? Do you not put a lot of armor on? Do you save it for later? So I love the idea and the concept. To me, it's all about how well you put, because people can easily make a rogue game and then say, "Oh, you're going here" and all this stuff, but they don't really flesh out what it means to put a true rogue game together, whether it's an independent or a AAA. And to me, that's important. There have been like I said, you had this you had Star Wars Fallen Order, that's like light rogue, and then you have these other major games, and like I said, there are games that I was like, I'm not going to touch it in. But again, it's about the writing. If it's good writing, I'm going to get drawn in. So right there, you kind of sold me on the idea. It's about choice, and it's about, do you go into this? And we've all had those rage moments where you're like, and it's not just rogue games. So I don't want people to think that because it's a rogue game, you're going to get. It's like that across boards. When you're playing games like that, you get immersed. Depending on how good the story is, how well it's developed, how well you're pulled in, and you're immersed into the story. So that was a great answer.
Mike, it sounds like you really like what you do, but I've got to ask you the big question: what do you dislike the most?
That's you're throwing the tough ones.
I do. What I do.
Yeah,
easy, medium, hard.
I think the tough things I find are when we're working on something and we're trying to work out an idea on the game, and like I find like maybe not hate, but I find like annoying is just like when we're trying to balance things out and we're trying to make a fun experience, right? So we're trying to make sure this game is really fun, and I find like sometimes it's very easy as a game developer to be like, okay, this is the way we're going to solve this problem. This is like a very easy solution. We're going to do this, and this is going to solve our problem right now that we're having with this balance issue, right? Let's say players are dying too frequently at this part of the game. It's like, okay, we gotta ease that up a little bit. Let's ease it up by like reducing the damage on this attack or something, on this boss or something, right? It on the surface it sounds like it's a easy solution, but then you realize it's way more involved than just like tweaking like a little number. It can be, and this is all one big example. Like this could be for many different things, right? At first it seems like an easy solution to simply just tweak a little thing, but then you realize it's a cascading effect. It's like, okay, well, for a boss, it's very like restricted to a boss. But let's say we do something where we add like a dodge roll to the game, right? Now suddenly that changed like the dynamic of every fight in the entire game,
right?
And we have to be very careful what that does to the entire game, and it's very easy to just be like, okay, we got to make combat more exciting. Let's do this thing and this will solve it. And then suddenly all your enemies are the easiest thing in the world. And, now it's not really a roguelike anymore. It feels like you're just one-shotting everything, or like everything seems like like everything's cake all of a sudden. It's like those little things. And again, I'm just giving like a very broad example, but like I find that stuff, maybe not hate, but I find that stuff quite like annoying when it comes to design. And that's just part of making a game, the design aspect and doing that stuff. And you really have to think through it all. Like you can't just make a decision and be like, okay, boom, it's going to be that. It's going to be like, okay, that's kind of an idea, but we have to think of this, that, this, and this enemy over here, and this boss, and during this fight, this is going to happen. And you're thinking about like 40 different things at the same time. You're like, wow, this is complex.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Do you think that, like, in general, the industry has become a little bit more kind and a little more accepting of indie game developers? Because the reason I ask this is because, I mean, there's always the infamous case of like Phil Fish, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, who arguably created one of the greatest independent games of all time and then was like promptly run out of town by trolls.
Yeah.
So do you feel that like maybe there's like sort of like a rubber banding effect of that now, like where some independent games are almost like graded like on a little bit of a separate curve, and there's a little bit more of like an acceptance now that indie games are becoming a little bit more mainstream? Well, what's your feeling on that whole dynamic?
It's funny that you bring up Phil Fish, because I was watching Indie Game the movie recently.
Yes.
And it's kind of like one of these things where I remember hearing other people bring up his name and being like very like rough about him. Like I found like throughout the movie, I felt like extremely sympathetic to what he was talking about, right? Like and you have to, it's like when you're suddenly like, you got to like I was saying earlier, like every indie developer is kind of weird in different ways, right? And like we're all kind of quirky people, and it's hard not to happen when you're stuck in four walls. So I think like when you're suddenly thrown into limelight, like very suddenly out of nowhere, and you have all this attention on just you, and all these people are ragging on you because you're trying to make this perfect creation, all your heart's in it, and then you just have constantly harassed about whatever, right? I think by the end I felt like very sympathetic to him. And the thing is, when you look at indie games in general, I do think that there's a more forgiving element as like time's gone on. I think people are like realizing like, okay, when I'm playing this thing, and I think it's almost like a pendulum, right? I think there at certain points there were people that felt very harsh about like early access, because there were a lot of games that took advantage of that and really like threw that name into some like really like it's a dirty name now, if but I think as time's gone on from early access like becoming a thing, I think more and more people realized like, it's not everybody who throws the early access tag on their game is like a bad person or like they're trying to sell crap,
Right.
It's they're trying to make this game and their heart is in it. And a lot of people, I think, realize indie developers, their hearts are in what they're making. And especially when you're on a small team, like when we had 3 people, my God, it was insane to work on the game. Like it was very like it was hard to make progress sometimes because there's only one artist, there's only one programmer, things that focus is very like linear in that way. But now expanding the team, we're able to like focus very non-linearly. We're able to focus like, okay, we're working on this thing over here, we're working on this UI over here, we're working on this feature and balancing here. So we're able to kind of focus on many different things. And I can't imagine the indie developer who's alone, and it's just him doing all the art, all the programming, all that, all the music, and they're doing everything. And, imagine being harassed, and you're the only guy. There's no one on your team that's saying like, all right, man, it's going to be all right. It'll just be a phase. There's no, so it's hard, but I think like there is a rubber banding effect where I think as time's gone on, people have eased up a little bit on how, they treat indie developers in a lot of ways. So
well, it's funny too, because even before Phil Fish, you look back at the early 80s, like Howard Scott Warshaw creating ET, for example. He was the only guy there was no development team. It was one guy who did the whole thing.
And he did it in
And
like 3 weeks or something. I forget what exactly
yeah,
the time was.
he,
It was like
he
very quick. He
Right.
was not given a lot of time. He had like a
it was
movie restriction to go by, you know?
he did the whole game in between like 5 and 6 weeks.
Okay,
And
yeah.
you know, and the thing is, we have a very myopic and a very distorted, very filtered way of looking at history, especially in the gaming industry, because jumping forward to the whole thing with Phil Fish, it's like the advent of social media was on the increase,
Yeah.
parallel to him creating sort of like this independent game and neither side really knowing how to coexist. So there
Yeah.
was this misconception about what it took to really program a modern game from a solo perspective. Meanwhile, he didn't know how to acclimate himself, and it's not a knock on him, really, it's not. But
Yeah.
he wasn't, he wanted to make games, he didn't want to be a celebrity. So
Yeah.
the two worlds didn't they didn't collide very well at all, and I
Yeah.
felt totally bad for him. And I had the same, I had a guttural reaction to watching that documentary. I felt so bad for him. I mean, brilliant man, and he basically stepped away from the limelight, and it was the industry's loss, really.
Yeah.
He's a
Yeah.
very, you know, of course we're all quirky, we're, everybody in this industry is quirky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I felt particularly bad for him, and that's why, like today, whenever we're playing a game, whether it's a big studio game or something like that, or an independent game, I try to kind of keep in mind, like, you know, there were people behind this who created this. So
Yeah.
when we have a game that maybe doesn't reach expectations, I try to be a little bit more gentle about it. Like even when Agony came out, like that's like our running joke on this show is just how much I really can't stand that game. And I bought it, you know, for like $40 when it launched, because it was a team of 12 people that
Yeah.
created that game, and I wanted to kind of support them because early footage looked great, and then the game came out, it was just not very good at all. And
Right.
like, okay, so at what point do we feel as gaming consumers that it's incumbent upon us to heap praise upon something that's not earned, versus, you know, being this whole toxic culture where we just
Yeah.
completely dump on it and we don't give that
Yeah.
that good criticism.
We
From your
definitely have to be critical. Yeah. We like
And
we
that's
have
what
to. Yeah.
I was going to ask you, I wanted to ask you, and this is the big ticket item, of course. So like, how do you feel about how the game might be perceived? Like, are you okay with whatever happens? Like, if it comes out and it gets, you know, game of the year, or it comes out and nobody buys it, or it comes out,
Yeah.
everybody buys it, and then people dump on it, becomes a meme, or it comes out and does like a great financial success, but
Yeah.
you know, it doesn't get the critical, you know, where on that spectrum do you realistically see this thing happening, and where do you want it to be?
It's difficult. Like I find like you need criticism, right? Because you can't improve without criticism, right? The way I look at it is like I keep going back to the jazz thing because I feel like that it really describes like what you have to be like. You have to be able to like surf the wave almost no matter what direction it goes. And when it comes to making an indie game, like I almost the way my heart feels, and everyone's different, right? Like I feel like there's a lot of people that can get really angry, and it's kind of like, can you imagine working on something for like 5 years of your life? You let's say people quit college or something. They quit college halfway through and they're like, I'm working on this game. They work on it for 4 years. It goes out and then nobody cares, you know? Like, can you imagine that feeling? Like it's hard
It's a
to
gamble,
imagine.
yeah.
It's actually, and you, and it's basically like you, like there, if you got that, like you have almost every right to be angry, you know?
It sounds to me,
Yeah.
I'm going to paraphrase something you said earlier, because it just dawned on me, and I don't mean to interrupt, but it's
Oh,
like,
go ahead.
maybe life is a rogue game in that regard, because what you're describing is the scenario whereby when you said somebody signs the contract to go down into the
Yeah.
cave with the armor,
Yeah.
being an independent developer, you're signing that same kind of contract. You're going out with your investment, your money and your time and your dream. You're going out into the world, and you may or may not survive, you know,
Yep.
in the you know, the
Yeah.
metaphorical sense. But you know, like, yeah, it's a very rogue-like aspect to creating something, anything, when you devote that much time and resource.
I can tell your inner writer because like
Yeah.
this exactly, like I have
Little
to
bit.
say this is the thing I think about like every week or so. Like I think about it and I think, what makes Below the Stone compelling? Like what's the story behind this. Like, why do we like voluntarily play these things that like just beat our balls? You know, like it's just like why do we like actually like go into it voluntarily, like a game that's just hard, you know, like something that is just rough. I think it's like you're kind of experiencing life in a lot of ways where it's just like a roguelike game is that, you know, you're signing a contract in a way where you are voluntarily bringing this down. You're spending your time doing this, right? Like the thing I brought up earlier, like the armor, right? I spent like 2 or 3 hours making this armor, right? And now I go down into these caves and I am risking this 2 or 3 hours on this now. And I feel like I said, I think about it every week or so about Below the Stone, and I really do think it's like bringing like a weird human part of us out. Like I find like they're like whenever we listen to stories or like we hear like we have like a crescendo in a story, like we almost like feel it in our spine, almost like you feel a tingle, right? And I feel like a lot of these things are like kind of deep to humans in general, and that's kind of why like when we play these video games, when we watch these movies, when we hear these stories, we feel like so attached to what's going on, right? And I feel like with Below the Stone, when I told the story, right, and Smoke, you were saying like that you got me with that, you know, you sold it.
Yeah.
You sold Below the Stone, like that. It's like part of your DNA, part of your self feels like, okay, that is something I understand. That's something I get, you know, as a human. That's kind of like the story I want to tell with Below the Stone. It's a game that you get that feeling of what Civic that you brought up. You know, you are putting something out there and you don't know what's going to happen. You're risking it. And by risking it, there are rewards out there. You know, with Below the Stone, that's the whole idea. By putting on this armor, you're able to descend further to get those rewards, right? To be rewarded, or it can be completely lost. So yeah.
Well, it's the whole was it President Kennedy, right? We choose to do these things not because they are
Yeah.
easy, but because they are hard. And then there's that, you know, that's a horrible John F. Kennedy impression, by the way. But no,
I
but
thought it was great.
there's a sadomasochistic element to almost every gamer on some degree. Like some people not so much, but to some of us a whole lot. So on one end you have people that play on easy mode, and no, I'm not shaming anyone. I've done all this stuff. So, you know, and then people who want a deeper challenge, and people who want a deeper challenge, and then people take it beyond, like people that like they'll willingly blindfold themselves and play Punch Out on the NES and Perfect Run. You know, people that do like those things. So, you know, the one commonality we all have, I think, is we want to feel what it feels like to overcome something that is so hard. And even just in the idea of, you know, creating something from scratch anyway. I mean, you're talking about building a game. I can't even think of something more difficult than that. To me, as much as I love gaming, and I've been doing this for over 40 years, the concept of creating a game out of the ether is still very nebulous to me. It still seems like something whimsical and magical. And that's why I have the greatest respect for people that can create that way. It seems very hard. It seems very rewarding, but it to me, it's always going to be magical, you know. And I really appreciate you sharing all the details and giving us that insight, because it's just still really cool to hear, you know. So the best of luck with the whole thing. I think you're going to do great.
Yeah, it's
Thank you.
Awesome, man. And for those that coming in, we're talking to Mike Strollart, man, from the Strollart Studios, man, creator of Below the Stone. We're going to get to the meat and potatoes real quick, Mike, because everybody's hit me up and saying we want to see the game.
Go for it.
We want to see the game, man. So, Mike, as we play the game, we want you to actually give us like a little rundown of features, everything. Like, give us a little backstory of this game and just some of the features of you know, what can we find in this game and what can we enjoy from it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so the thing is with Below the Stone, we made it a game that every time you descend into these caves, we wanted to make it so you never knew what was going to happen, right? We wanted to make it so it wasn't something predictable where you go into these caves and you know exactly what you're going to run into. That was kind of like a big design decision when it came to, there's a lot of people who ask this question. What happens if you descend into these caves and then you die and then you come back? Is it the same cave? We chose not to do that. It's going to be a different cave every single time you descend.
RNG.
So this is
Yeah.
procedurally generated then?
Yes, yeah. So
Oh,
it's
wow.
completely
Nice,
it's completely procedurally
That is
generated.
awesome.
Yep. So every time you descend into these caves, it's going to be a completely new cave system. And what we wanted to do is make it so, like, if your character dies, it is gone. So anything you died with, it is gone now. And the whole story behind it is these caves seem to be a shifting thing. So every time you descend, the caves almost are alive in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And what we wanted to do is, and I'll tell a little bit of the story right now. It seems as though these caves are indeed living in some sort of way. And every time you go down, it seems to be inching you and luring you deeper into the caves.
Right.
And it wants you to come deeper and deeper into these caves. So every time you descend and put on this armor, put on this equipment that you acquired through these runs through the caves, you are being lured slowly deeper and deeper to get even better resources. But every time you go down, it's a bigger and bigger loss as you choose to go down. So that's been a big like element of the game. I don't know, like, are there any other features that you guys are particularly like curious about? Like,
What's the counter at the top that's counting down from 19 minutes?
oh, so that would be, so this was a demo timer. So when he was playing this, yeah, this was a demo timer. But
Gotcha.
we are thinking about, so one thing we considered, and a lot there are some other games that do this. There are things called run modifiers. So every time you go down, you're obviously choosing to go down with these certain risks, right? When you put on this armor, you're putting on a certain risk. But you're also kind of also preparing for this run, right? What we want to do is add run modifiers to the game as well. So every time you go down, you might be able to shift things around just a little bit. Like, well, I want to be in this specific biome this time. I want to see a little more of this, but there might be a trade-off as well. So let's say you're really urging for copper ore for your new copper armor set that you need, or like a copper pickaxe that you need to gather higher tier resources, right? You could do this where you can go up to somebody and like we have this idea for a mage that will be able to transform the cave just a little bit for you in your favor. And this run modifier might give you more copper, but it might trade off in that now you see this timer on the top of your screen, right? And there's something that's going to happen when that timer ends. So it's giving you a limited amount of time to accomplish your goal, your missions that you need to do before this bad thing happens, right? Or it might be that more enemies appear, or it might be that resources are a little harder to find, but the enemies are also a little less on you, right? So it might be various different things that we do to play around with run modifiers, and we really want to like lean in heavy on that in the future.
Real quick question. I keep looking at this map at the bottom right too, man. How I keep scrolling. Is it as far as like an infinite field, man, that you can explore as vast as you want to, or is it like is it boundaries?
So there are eventually boundaries, because like we actually had this discussion early on with designing the game. So anybody who's a game developer, this is kind of like, I guess, meat and potatoes of talking game development, right? And design decisions. We had thought to ourselves, like, why don't we just make it infinite so you can just go on forever? But we thought about it and we were like, okay, well, we also got to make it so it regenerates a cave every single time you go down. Can you imagine like regenerating an infinite field forever? You know what I mean? So we thought to ourselves, okay, we want it to feel infinite. We wanted to make it so it's a very large area where you can explore, but also not technically be infinite. So what we did is something in between, where we wanted to make it so it's a very, very large size that is, I will personally say, it's almost impossible to explore everything. Like there's no like, I saw every room in this cavern, you know, there's no such thing as that. So this cave is so vast that there's no way you can explore the whole thing. There's no way on your map that you can mark everything.
You know, there's going to be some tryhards that's going to try to make that.
Yeah, like me, dude. So, what do you mean?
So
I'm going to be the first.
This is going to be the clip I'm going to regret. So when they get my clip of me saying it's going to be impossible, they'll play it as their and then they're going to show like a speed run of exploring the whole thing.
Exactly. So I'm also a hoarder too, man. I looked at his inventory as well, And then I see like, now is there a cap on as far as items collecting go, or we can just collect up to like 999 of such ores, or
Well, yeah, we actually, what we want to do is, I mentioned earlier the whole like hub area. So right now we're seeing the caves, right? So
Mhm.
you're exploring the dangerous area of the game. What we want to have is this hub area, which you can return to,
Yeah.
and you'll be able to store your items. So any other items that you acquired during your descents that you don't want to risk on the caves, you are able to store them away and keep them safe, right? So if you, let's say you had an extra set of iron armor, or if you had an extra set of copper armor, or let's say on your way to iron armor, you had like tin armor or something. You put on the iron armor. Oh my God, I died to the boss. You get the controller out of the wall, out of after throwing it, and then you end up going back to this area where you stored all your items, and you're like, okay, I still have this tin armor.
Mhm.
I can go back and I can still make some progress, right?
Right.
So you're able to do that stuff. So that's what we want to do, and also make it so there's nothing stopping you from getting additional sets of iron armor, right?
Right. Right.
So if you have this really high tier equipment, you can be like, okay, I don't want to risk my absolutely high tier equipment. Let me just go in with like my basic tin armor that I got like near the beginning. I'll just go in with this. I have more experience at the game now. I know how to fight these guys. I'll just go in with tin armor, and I'll get a second set of iron armor. So when I face that boss, and if I die, it's like, okay, I didn't lose too much. I have that second set sitting away. I got, I'm safe. So that's kind of what we wanted to do with the game. And that's kind of where I feel it's fair. It's all your choice. It's all you making the decisions, and you're able to do things like that.
A lot of
Not
us.
for
Oh,
nothing,
sorry.
but the animation of the dwarf chugging the mead and then like tossing it over his shoulder is amazing. I love that.
Yeah,
That's
that was
amazing.
Andrew. That was really
Well,
funny. Yeah.
that is cool, man. That's cool.
A lot of us, we look for the OP armor. You know what I'm saying? As
Yep.
far as like, when we like, okay, we want to, have the best of the best of the best.
Yeah.
As far as that goes, man, like, is there what's the, I guess the list of armor that you can, is it like a vast list of armor that you can go ahead and pursue, that saying like, okay, I'll get like a level 10, oh, there's a level 20 out there, there's a level 30, there's a level 90, there's a level 120,
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, what's the vastness of armor detail that you have in this game, or that we can pick and choose from?
Yeah. So what we want to do is very like, I mentioned Terraria as like an inspiration earlier, and Terraria has a lot of different like sets of armor and weapons and stuff, and we really want to play up that idea that there's armor that's like craftable. So there's your main ores that you can get though. So what we want to do is there are various cave layers to the game, and every cave layer. So imagine these as floors, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the floors get more and more difficult as you go down. What we want to have is like 10 biomes per floor. So every time you descend a cavern layer, there's going to be all these different biomes that you can explore, right? And what we wanted to do from that is make it so as you're mining on a layer, there's going to be various like tiers of material that you can get. So on the first layer, it might start as like tin, then copper, then iron, then lead. And then from there, you might expand further. So you go down to the next cavern floor, and it might be silver and gold and platinum and mithril. So it might, as you're going down, you're going to have to upgrade your pickaxe as you're going along too. So to mine a higher material, you're going to need a higher tier pickaxe. You can't just go down with a copper pickaxe and mine mithril. You're going to have to go through these various stages, through these runs, to get a higher tier pickaxe to mine these materials.
Right.
So you have to kind of prove that you're able to get through these layers before you can just suddenly skip all the way to mithril,
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay, that's understandable. Now, my last thing about with this feature is, are you planning on, as far as co-op in this game, and when is that? I guess when that will be available, or
yeah. So that seems to always be the question. So, it's funny. When we, I forget if I told you. I can grab this real quick. So when we first showed our art of the game, and I'll grab it real quick. So underneath here, I have our original miniature banner that we had at the first PAX West.
Nice.
So what we had was our dwarf here, and a couple characters, a couple enemies, right? Two of the bosses we have planned, and I was like, okay, this is um like a little promotional piece. And then every time when people walked up, they thought, um, hey, is this game multiplayer?
Mm-hmm.
And that always seemed to be the question: is this multiplayer? So, and I would always give the answer because we weren't confirmed at the time whether we'd have multiplayer. It was always, it's something we're talking about. It's something we're excited to do and stuff. There's no solid answer. There's no official answer. So after that convention where we had showed this banner, I ended up having another banner created. And I want to see if any of you guys are able to notice the difference with this banner.
Hey, you got a buddy.
So suddenly, I was like, okay, a lot of people seem to like multiplayer and they seem to ask. And I said, okay, let's see what people think of when they see that.
Yep.
And people were like, oh my God, we'd love that this is multiplayer. And, oh, me and my girlfriend would love to play. She'll be on the Steam Deck while I'm on Steam.
Yep.
And, or when we're on Switch, I'll have this controller, she'll have this controller. And, everybody started talking about they want to play this with their friends. And that made me really happy hearing that everyone was like, oh my God, me and my friend will play this all the time. This looks like exactly our game. So when I saw that, it was just like, to me, it felt like a natural move.
Mm-hmm.
The answer is maybe. So so we're going to have to see. That's with fair. Multiplayer.
That's fair. All right, that's understandable because it's like, you want to dive deep into these caverns, man, with your buddy. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, I'll tell my buddy, hey, listen, Civ, you or Smoke, you go to the down south left and all that. I'll go northeast and all that too, and then we'll just explore, come back. Which is really cool. You know what I'm saying? It kind of, it just makes
exactly
it enjoyable as well. But actually, even single play, like we just saw with the gameplay, is even really first of all, I'll say it's relaxing in that sense, before you go way further into the depths of it, but like I said, we definitely are looking forward to it. I got one more question on my list, man. We're going to dive into the marketing. So when your game was when you was showcasing the game, first of all, I remember you reached out to me on Twitter and told me to, like, hey, you know what, since you're coming to PAX, I want you to check out the game real quick, man. Came in, fell in love with the game automatically. When it comes to marketing, and putting your game out there like that, I know there's a story that I want you to talk about, right? This concerns one of the biggest streamers that I know ever, Asmongold, who actually, give me the whole gist of it. I want the chat to listen to this, man. What's the connection with Below the Stone to the biggest streamer on Twitch, Asmongold?
So this was it was funny. I ended up getting a random message from somebody, a fan of ours, who said, hey, Asmongold's doing this thing called OTK Expo.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you should submit to it. And that was pretty much the message. It was just like, and I was like, okay, this looks like it could be pretty cool. What are the odds that we'll get in?
Right.
There's a submission form and everything. And I was like, okay, well, it'll be worth it spending 30 minutes on this. And then, I quickly put in our information and I told our story about how we got on Kickstarter and stuff. And
now before we continue, Mike, for concept, for those that don't know who OTK is, probably one of the biggest Twitch teams ever, man. Like, consists of just nothing but big name streamers.
The A tier,
A tier streamers, basically, the top of the top of everybody who look up to, you know what I mean? So OTK, they again through an expo, and so continue. I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
Oh yeah, so we were ended up submitting to this, and a few days, it was like a month later, I think I ended up getting a response from Tips Out. So, and I think he does a lot of like the production and management for OTK Expo, and I got a message saying like, congratulations, Below the Stone is going to be a part of this. And I told the whole story about us being on Kickstarter and how we had two Kickstarters. We had one where we didn't quite make our funding, but we ended up getting all these fans who wanted to see our game be a thing, and that inspired us to keep going with the game.
Mm-hmm.
And we had our second Kickstarter, which was like a blowout success, where before we ended up like making like half the funding, we ended up getting like $5,000 for the Kickstarter, which means on Kickstarter terms, that means you didn't make it because you didn't hit your goal.
Right.
On the second Kickstarter, we ended up making like $40,000 and blowing out the goal and just blasting through everything.
Right.
So that was, and a huge wave of fans came in. It was an amazing experience. And I told that story and they were like, okay, that sounds amazing. Let's tell that story on the stream. And I didn't get to talk with Asmongold prior to any of this. I talked with a lot of the staff and a lot of the people that like helped make this expo happen. And what happened was, I remember being told on the day of, we're going to be joining this Discord. There's the we were put on a Discord call and they gave us some basic information on the stream. And they said, you know, you're gonna have to sit in this call and just kind of sit there and wait for somebody to appear. And then somebody appeared and they said, oh, hey, I'm this person from the OTK management. I wanted to tell you the stream is going to be happening soon. If you look on the stream right now, you can see how the interview is done. I wanted to ask if you had any questions before the interview. And I was kind of like a little stun locked because it was very sudden. The guy just pops in the call and everything and just talks about this stuff. Then I was like, I think I asked some like really benign question. It's like, it was like something like, oh, when do you think my interview is going to come up? And it's like, we're not quite sure yet. It's going to depend upon the interview that's happening right now, but it ought to be soon or something. I was like, okay, I don't know if I have any. And before I could even ask the next question, he's like, okay, it looks like we're gonna have to go, so I'm going to have to leave. So I'm gonna have to talk to the next person. So we'll go. And then he suddenly pops out.
Right.
And I'm like, thinking to myself, like all the questions I should have asked, like, am I allowed to say certain words on stream?
Right.
Is there a cuss filter? Is there like, what can I say? What can't I say? What are the, what kind of questions is he going to throw? Any new questions at me?
He has no cuss filter.
So, but I don't know, this could be like a primo stream. They're trying to make it like really clean for kids, so anyway, I go on stream and everything. And then I remember just like Discord, I hear like the Discord, like somebody joined the call.
Yeah.
And I hear the stream in the background. And I remember saying like, hello, are you there? Hello. And I was like, hey, I had another question for you. And like, I'm looking at the view counter. It says like, I think at the time there was like, through various streams, there was like 2 million viewers or something like that. And I was like talking on the stream, like, hello, is anyone there? and then suddenly I hear in the background, I hear, and next up is Below the Stone. And I hear the trailer start playing and I'm like, oh my God, I like flood, all the color disappears. And I remember I'm suddenly just like thrown on the screen and it's just like, oh, hello, Michael, we just wanted to talk about, and it's just Asmongold talking with me all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And
Awesome.
I was for real. Like I was just like IRL stun locked. I was just like, I remember. So I was telling this earlier that I said, like at least like 50 times. I was like, so Below the Stone, is about, and I remember like when they played the trailer, there was like all these people were hyped up. Like I remember looking at the chat, like the chat was going crazy, and it was like all these people playing like the Pepe with the headphones, like jamming out.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, this is great. And then and then I'm suddenly thrown on the camera, and I was just like, Below the Stone, and I'm like saying and I just remember like looking at the chat, and I see in the chat like spamming I'm like, oh my God, this is so bad. And I just I ended up, there it is. So I ended up talking about some of the stuff that I remember talking about earlier, like just going into the story of what started this whole thing. Just how we went through the Kickstarter, how we went through everything, how we met our publisher, which is a funny story, like went through all these things. And by the end, I remember in the chat, everyone was spamming like a Chad face and then after it. I was like Chad, and I was like, okay,
you gotta get a t-shirt. You gotta have to get
Chad. And I remember people spamming that, and I felt good after it. It was like, like I was telling this earlier, it was like the beginning of the interview, I was like flying off the road, the steering wheel's out of control. I was like
Right.
flying off the road, and then suddenly I like pulled back on the road, and I'm like, oh my god, okay, I'm back in control. I'm back in control, you know. And I felt like I had like a clean interview by the end, and you know the people saying Chad at the end, I was like, okay, I managed to pull it out.
Yeah,
You know,
right,
like
right.
people knew I said a lot, but people like respected it at the end. You
Yeah,
know, like
yeah.
people like knew after telling the story and everything, and how like we ended up like contacted. It was Scott Miller messaging me, and I remember like my first response to publishers back then was to just block them. So
Right, right.
I ended up blocking him, and then people were like Chad, you know, like people spamming Chad. And then by the end of the interview, it's just like Chads, and I was like, okay, you know, I pulled it out. I pulled through the whole thing. So that was a good feeling by the
You're
end.
gonna be the Chad now, man.
Yeah.
Man,
Chad.
And then it was like at the end of the interview, I knew I had to say one thing. I was like, after this interview, we're going to be hopping on our Discord to talk with people. So if you want to join our Discord, it's just go and strollart.com. And suddenly our Discord's like suddenly like hundreds of people join.
Yeah.
And just all of a sudden. And yeah, it was a crazy interview. It was cool talking with Asmongold. It was cool working with them. So I mean, it was exciting. And to me, even though I kind of flubbed the interview just a little bit, I thought to myself by the end, like, there's going to be other opportunities like this. Even if I said a little bit too many times, you know, it's like there's going to be other interviews with streamers at some point, and like what we're doing now, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, I'll be able to talk more about the game, you know, at some point.
Even chat now is like it says, hey, we were talking with Mike. I'm Chad Strollhart.
No, don't do it. Don't do
That's
it.
good.
It's wrecking it right now, man. Listen, it's not gonna be nothing but Chads, man. And listen, but like I said, it was, and I agree with Andrew on the chat. Says it was a lucky break that y'all needed. You know,
yeah.
Like seriously, you know, that was amazing as far as like marketing goes. And to get that needed exposure for the game, man, that was perfect. That you know, y'all was on, you know, OTK, you know, and just that was the greatest plugin ever. Like, who doesn't want to be, you know, showcased by OTK, by Asmongold, you know, by big streamers like that, man, that have a following, that have influence. Like, that's awesome, you know. And so, that's a great start, man, for you, Mike. Seriously, great.
So when will Below the Stone be available, and what platforms can we expect it on?
That's a tough question. So what we are going to be doing soon. So in the next 2 months here, we're going to be doing a public demo on Steam. So you guys watching right now will be able to play the game. And yes, and what we're going to also do is we're going to have a second even more extreme demo in October for Steam Next Fest. So we're going to be celebrating Steam Next Fest, and we're going to have a like a premium demo for that, and we're going to be handing that out to press and stuff and you guys. So we're going to be doing that, and we're also going to be doing early access very soon after those demos. So you know, it's exciting times for the game, and you know, we can't technically announce our release date right now because the exact day is being determined right now, but that just shows kind of how close we're at this point, you know?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I feel you on that.
Yeah.
But the greatest thing is, chat, if you're still here, chat, I'm telling you right now, you can get a chance to play Below the Stone. Mike, you're going to be, along with us, man, we're going to be at Too Many Games.
Oh, yeah.
Too Many Games is coming up, man. I'm going to put the flyer up real quick. Too Many Games is coming up June 23rd to the 25th. Of 2023 this year. Of course, man, that's another month. It's going to be insane. Too Many Games got a lot of things happening. I'm seriously, it's going to be a bunch of indie devs going to come as well too. Like I said, you're going to Mike's going to be there showcasing Below the Stone. So if you want to, go ahead, check it out. Make sure you get your tickets at toomanygames.com. And then like say what's up to Mike. You know what I mean? If you got to keep saying to him when you meet him, go ahead and say to him. You know what I mean? But listen, like I said, checking out the game and getting a chance to play Below the Stone is a blessing, seriously. And I got a chance to play it a few times. You know what I mean? He packs at Too Many Games, and it's so much fun, chat. Trust me, you will love it. So make sure that We have the convention Too Many Games happening June 23rd, 25th. Of course, there's many celebrities coming through. There's going to be many concerts, man, panels, vendors. And like I said, our boy Mike Strollart is coming in there with Below the Stone. So make sure that you definitely check it out, man. Listen, it's going to be amazing.
Do we want to make the big announcements about what PTC is going to be doing at Too Many Games? Because I think we need to know about, because we haven't said anything yet.
I'll let y'all do it, man. I told Mike, but I'll let y'all do it.
I'll let Sim, because Sim put all the work.
Yeah, I'll let Sim.
Mind if no, it was a group effort. Okay, no, it's important. Listen, first of all, so Too Many Games, for those that don't know, again, we talked about this earlier in the show, but it's a convention that basically is all things video games and tabletop gaming and all this stuff. It's been going on for years now. Every single year it gets bigger and better. Last year I didn't think it could get any bigger. And apparently this coming year, it's getting bigger. So Pass the Controller, I think we've been a part of this we've been doing their show for about 4 years with our own panel. Mm-hmm. And then last year we had our own table, and every year it gets bigger and bigger. Last year we had the chance to do some celebrity interviews. We did those. We hosted some of them. Keith Silverstein was one. We did Magic the Gathering panel with some influencers. That was really great. Things like that. This year, wow. we're checking off some big ticket items. So
me and Mike was talking about that earlier. Yeah, man. Oh God.
So yeah, we're gonna be interviewing Charles Martinet, who is the voice of Mario, of course. We've interviewed him once before for a different convention. It was great. He's such a nice guy to talk to. So we're going to be bringing you that panel there in conjunction with Too Many Games. And then a couple others, we have some other guests. And then, of course, we have our table there. We're going to be part of the scavenger hunt. We're going to have our own panel. The thing I'm most excited for is, and this is like a bucket list celebrity, somebody in the gaming industry who yeah, I mean, as really, really, really big fans of the X-Men movies and of Watchmen, and in particular, the Metal Gear Solid video game franchise, we are finally going to have an opportunity to interview the one and only David Hayter.
Yep.
And like the hairs stand up, because he's just such an interesting guy, such a decent guy. So many questions we have to ask him. So please stop out. We're going to be there. We're going to be hosting that panel with him. There's just so much going on that weekend. To me, it's like Christmas and New Year's and everything wrapped into one. So stop out. That's going to be June 23rd through the 25th. You can go online right now to toomanygames.com for tickets and information. It's going to be a great time. So please stop out. Please stop out.
And like I said, it's just a hangout too. Cause listen, yes. you will find me probably, like I said, at Mike's booth at Below the Stone for sure, man, just hanging out, so it's just a hangout, it's so cool. I mean, it's a more relaxing video game convention as well too. So, you'll get to meet a lot of friends, or new friends as well, and just, people that you want to talk to, man. So yeah, just definitely stop one out, easily stop one out, man. So I can't wait for that. We got a month left. I can't wait, man. Like seriously, we've been saying it. We even saying the Discord, man. We was like, oh my God, I'm shaking right now. Like I can't wait for this. This is like a holiday. So yeah, Too Many Games. We'll be there.
Yep. Absolutely. I got a question for you guys regarding Too Many Games. What was your experience last time that you remember that you find worthy of telling to the audience right now? Like a story that you remember from Too Many Games last year.
Oh man,
there's a lot of stuff.
Well, for myself, is Mark and I hosting the panel, and to be able to engage. I mean, back in my element of hosting panels and all, to get the crowd engaged, and us stepping up for Too Many Games. It was, and then of course, we can't forget our own panel. We always, it grows every year. It gets bigger every year. And we were joking about it the other day. And like I said, again, we to me, it's our panel, not to toot our home horn, but like I said, again, we work from being in a small corner towards the big time. So it's for us, or at least like for me, from my viewpoint, it's the engagement with the fans, the people that follow us, the people that watch us, people that come out to support us. They come over to us. They come to our booth. They come to our panel. They're very engaged. And that's not sitting there like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like, yeah, what's up? What's going on? And it's great. And when you have fans that come over to us, like I look forward to the day when you have a lot of people in the industry that just comes, oh, pass the controller. Like, you know, we're making our name be known. And across the video game and gaming industry, especially the people that we've had on our show, to the people we've interviewed on different shows and everything else. So to be able to go with too many games and doing that at too many games, there's so many moments for me to look at it just as a one moment thing. There are too many moments to name. And like I said, again, it's just I think the most important thing is the engagement with the fans and the supporters of our podcast show.
Yep.
So
that's I second that. I second that. Basically,
it was really nice too, really having a chance. I know I've spoken to him before in the past. He's somebody that, you know, I've been trying to get on our show. I need to try a little bit harder to get him on our show. But personal hero of mine is James Rolfe, Angry Video Nerd. Yeah. And of course he's you know, with Rex Viper now, they're doing their concert thing. They're going to be there this year at Too Many Games playing again. I really have always loved his work, you know, not just his video game stuff, but just
filmmaking, everything
he does. I mean, he's just a snippet of lots of things that make me want to do what I do better. And he preserves an element of my childhood where I can relate so heavily to. So you know, I had a chance to really have a good discussion with him backstage there, and such a nice guy. His whole crew, they're very phenomenal people. I mean, we've had different members of Rex Viper on our show before. They're just a great group of guys, and James in particular, just such a cool down to earth guy. Like I said, I really want to get him on our show. He's like, call me next year, and I am so hesitant because I want to do the show that is worthy of him, his contributions, because I think that, like, you know, being one of those early mavens, one of those pioneers of you know, the YouTube element and the social media presence, things like that related a lot to gaming. It's so important. So I don't want to do just, you know, the normal interview that he gets. I want us to really just do the definitive, you know, the what is it, like inside the actor's studio, like like James Lipton. I want to do that. I want to give him what credit that's credit's due. So, but yeah, it was cool talking to him. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you guys talk with like some huge A-list people at this. Like it's insane how like
it's
everything
weird
that,
is what it is. Like, I always wanted to ask him, be like, I always want to ask like Mark Meir, be like, why are you spending your time with us? You're too cool for us. Like, why are you here?
Speak for yourself.
No, but we appreciate it though, because you know a lot of these guys, I mean, they could be doing anything else. Like, I mean, you look at guys like Charles Martinet, and you meet him, and he's just such a cool guy. And then you meet like Red Dead Redemption, we met the entire cast, and we did a panel with them.
That's crazy.
Phenomenal. Angela Navani, she's awesome.
Yeah, for me, Kojima.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I'm not trying to name drop. I'm just always impressed that they have the time and they are so still connected to their fans. Like, a lot of other genres out there, like musicians, like we're not gonna, you couldn't, if you did a show like this and you wanted to talk to Axl Rose, you'd have a hard time doing it if you were like all about music. If you were into movies, you're not going to get an interview with James Gunn. It's just, I'm not putting him down. It's just a different thing. I just always feel, and maybe it's just a matter of my perception, but I always feel like the gaming industry is like tighter. Like there's more accessibility within each other. I think we want to connect. There's a natural aspect of gaming that we feel that communal draw. So it's always cool with me. It's cool for me, like when people want to be a part of our show, because it's like, man, I learned so much having you on the show tonight. I mean, I walk away from these learning more, taking something away that I feel is of value. So it's not just for the audience, it's for me. Like, this is what I would want to be asking you if it was just you and I just meeting. So hopefully, regardless of, I don't like to say A-list, B, you know, whatever. We're all group. You know, I just always want them to feel too, like, hey, you know, we got something out of this. This was something that was of value on both ends. So hopefully everybody's having fun. We you know, we haven't had any major catastrophes in that yet. No wardrobe dysfunctions or anything. It's like,
but I gotta ask you one more question too, Mike, because a lot of people are like, of course, now people are inspired, and I got to ask you, man, like, what's the advice you would give to those that, you know, want to jump into indie game development, man, that wanted to start but it wasn't too sure, what's the one main advice, or just even any advice that you would give to those that are trying to get their feet wet?
You know, I'll go into the roguelike game thing. I'll bring it full circle in a way, right? Uh, Below the Stone it's a game about taking risks and putting everything out there to succeed.
Yeah.
And the only way you can succeed, it's usually not playing it safe. There's a lot of, I know a lot of developers, what they do is there's some people who feel like they need to hide their idea, that somebody's going to steal their idea, or they have to keep what they're doing secret, or they need to wait to share what they're working on because it's not perfect yet.
Right.
That's the wrong kind of thinking. I think I'm not like a person who watches Mr. Beast very often, but I remember seeing like a snippet of a podcast he was on or something, right? And he said don't wait to make your first YouTube video. And I think this goes to like anything with the indie industry and everything.
Right.
Don't wait to make, he said, don't wait to make your first video, just make it, and make your goal to just improve it every time. Right. So every time you do a podcast, every time you make a post about your game, every time you or write a chapter of your story, whenever you do these things creatively, don't be afraid to share these things. Right. You should be posting about it like day one and show what you're working on, like and that kind of like, it makes you like proud of what you're working on when you share it. And you have to kind of like, you have to like shed that skin of being afraid to share what you're working on. You have to share what you're working on. And when it comes to the indie industry, like indie games in general, you really have to share what you're working on. Share it day one, share everything that you're working on, share the art you happen to be doing, the new cool game feature that you did recently. Like, you should be sharing this stuff. I think that would be a big thing. And like, don't be afraid to get your boots dirty, like,
right.
don't be afraid, like, okay, I got to do this perfectly, I got to redo everything I did so far. Like, don't get in the mindset of like, I have to keep fixing everything. You have to just start, and you just got to go from there. So, and I think that goes for a lot of things. It's not just the indie industry or game industry. It's everything. You just have to put yourself out there and be willing to be a little uncomfortable at the beginning and learn from your mistakes, improve on what you're doing, and make yourself, what you're going to be eventually, keep improving. So that's what I've learned.
From video game to life lesson. That's Mike Strollart,
yep.
Man. We've been talking to Mike Strollart, man, owner of Strollart Studios, man, the creator of Below the Stone. Mike, thank you so much, man. Seriously, for jumping on.
Thank you, guys.
You were freaking amazing, man. Listen, the chat, you got to make sure that you wishlist right now on Steam, Below the Stone. Wishlist that, man. Make sure you dive into his Discord as well, too. Strollart.com, right? I believe Strollart.com
yep.
is your website.
Strollart.com or belowthestone.com. Both of those work. Yep.
Or hit him up on his Twitter for sure.
Yep.
He's a really easy guy to talk to, man. So make sure that you definitely try out Below the Stone when it comes out. Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be it for the show. I would do my endgame credits, but listen, I can find my endgame credits this time because we got a QR code on the bottom right, man. Make sure you go ahead and do the QR code. That will take us to every link, every social that we have for Pass Controller, man. And of course, you have PTC Nation, where you can go ahead. It's a community group on Facebook where you can go ahead and just meet together, play games, set up meetings, man. Listen, that's what we do. PTC Nation, where we all pass the control together. Mike, again, thank you so much, man. We will see you at Too Many Games, man, for sure, man. I cannot wait.
Games.
Seriously, we will see you at Too Many Games. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be it. I'm so freaking hyped right now. Listen, for Mike Strollart, Below the Stone, for me, for Smoke, for Civic Minded, of course, you know what it is. I am McNux. This has been Pass Controller, and as always, people, get good.
Peace and hair grease, y'all. Peace and hair grease.
Oh, that was awesome. Good job. Yeah, that was awesome, guys. Like, I usually like, it's funny, like when you go and usually when you do a podcast, whether you're running it or you're the one that's being invited onto it. Usually, like, there's like, oh, this will go for 50 minutes or something. And then when it goes to like an hour, 40 minutes, it's like, okay, this was packed with content. You know, this was yeah. So that was nice.
I'll tell you something. I think that, and I don't know. I'm of the school.
Good.
No, just saying. I'm of the school of Howard Stern, like the long form interview.
Yeah.
You know, like you don't want it to be dull, but like if something's really interesting and who you and your product are in your studio, I mean, I'm more interested in it. We could keep going. But I mean, no, as long as you're not off put by it.
Oh yeah, it was awesome.
The opportunity to get to that. That's good. That's great. That's what we're here for.
You guys are, I mean, like,